Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're going to give your Java code a face. We're diving deep into the classic tools for building graphical user interfaces, applets, and the Abstract Window Toolkit.
So, how do you give your Java code a face? Well, today we're tackling a core part of Java programming, graphical user interfaces, or GUIs. We're going to focus on the two foundational technologies that you're almost guaranteed to see on your exams, applets and the Abstract Window Toolkit, also known as AWT. You know, at the highest level, you can think of it like this. Applets are these tiny little Java programs, and they're designed to live and run right inside a web browser. AWT, on the other hand, lets you build full-blown, standalone, independent desktop applications.
All right, here's our game plan. We're going to kick things off with the applet lifecycle, then jump into the AWT components that actually bring our GUIs to life. After that, we'll figure out how to arrange everything neatly and make it interactive, before we wrap up by putting the two technologies head-to-head.
Okay, first up, applets. A really classic exam topic is the applet lifecycle. Now, this is just a set of 5 key methods that the browser calls automatically, from the moment your applet is born to the moment it's destroyed.
The thing you absolutely have to remember for your exams is the order and how often these get called. So, init and destroy, they're called only once in the applet's entire life. But start and stop, they can be called over and over again, like if you switch to another browser tab and then come back. And paint, that's the artist. It redraws the screen whenever it needs an update, using methods like drawLine and drawRect to create all your visuals.
So, to get an applet running, you have to embed it in an HTML file, and you do that with the applet tag. For your assignments, just burn this into your memory. The code attribute, which points to your compiled.class file, and width and height are absolutely mandatory. It won't work without them.
But what if you need to give your applet some starting info from the get-go? Well, that's where the param tag comes in. You nest it right inside the applet tag, and then inside your Java code, you can grab those values using the getParameter method. Super useful.
All right, let's switch gears and talk about AWT. I want you to think of AWT as your toolbox. It's got all the visual components, the buttons, the text fields, the labels, all the stuff you'll use to actually build the interface for both your applets and your standalone applications. So, everything in AWT has to start with a container. You gotta have a place to put all your stuff, right? The two most important ones you'll use are Frame, which is a proper standalone window with a title and border, and Panel, which is basically just a simple, borderless area for grouping other components together.
Okay, so you've got your container. What do you fill it with? You fill it with components. These are the actual interactive bits and pieces. Buttons for triggering actions, labels for just displaying static text, and text fields for getting user input. And creating them is super straightforward. For example, button B equals new button, click me. That's it.
So you've created all your components, but how do you actually arrange them in the window? If you just throw them in, it'll be a total mess. You don't use pixel coordinates. Instead, Java gives us something way smarter: layout managers.
First up is Flow Layout. It's the simplest one of the bunch, and it's often the default. It works just like words in a paragraph, arranging your components from left to right, and when it runs out of space, it just wraps around to the next line. Simple as that. Next, we have Border Layout. Now, this one is perfect for your typical application windows. It splits the container into 5 distinct regions: north, south, east, west, and a big main area in the center. Just think about putting toolbars at the top and maybe a status bar down at the bottom.
And finally, there's Grid Layout. This one is for when you need a grid. It arranges all your components into equal-sized cells, which makes it absolutely perfect for things like a calculator keypad. You just tell it how many rows and columns you want, and it does the rest. So the whole point here is choosing the right manager for the job. You wouldn't use a hammer to turn a screw, right? Same idea. This table gives you a really quick summary of when you should probably reach for each one.
All right, this is where it all comes together. This is the magic. A pretty GUI is totally useless if it can't respond when a user clicks on something, and that's where the event delegation model comes into play. It's basically a 3-step dance. First, a component, let's say a button, is the source. When you click it, it creates an event object. Then, that event gets sent to a listener, and that listener is just a piece of your code that's waiting for the event and knows exactly what to do when it gets it.
So that piece of code that responds to the user's action is called an event handler. And to make this whole thing work, you need to write one critical line of code, something like button.addActionListener this. This is the line that tells the button, our source, to send its events to your listener code. It's the glue that holds it all together.
Okay, let's bring it all home and summarize the key differences you absolutely need to remember for your exams.
So on one hand, you have applets. They run inside a browser and are super restricted for security reasons. On the other hand, AWT applications are standalone programs and have a lot more freedom. An applet always extends java.applet.applet, but a typical AWT app is going to use a frame as its main window.
So what's the big takeaway here? What's the one thing you should remember? It's this. AWT is the foundation. It provides the fundamental building blocks for all Java GUIs. Applets were just a specialized way of using that foundation for the web. So learning AWT is absolutely essential.
And there you have it. We've covered the applet lifecycle, the AWT components and layout managers, and the event model that ties it all together beautifully. You now have the complete foundational toolkit to finally move beyond the command line and start building your very own interactive graphical applications in Java.